What is it you want, Barry? What do you want? You want the moon? Just say the word and I'll throw a lasso around it and pull it down.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dying times here.
Come with me if you want to live.
That's it, man. Game over, man. Game over.
The Force will be with you, always.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to 20th Century Geek. I'm your regular host, Scott Weatherly, and we're back for some more Jackie Chan action. And to do it, I am joined by Jack. Jack, how are you doing? You okay?
I'm great, thank you. I mean, I'm obviously sad we're recording in February, so I'm sad to have said goodbye to Jackie Chan.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that you and I are going to continue that journey way past the month of January, because we're going to keep going back and talking every few weeks about Jackie Chan. So I'm kind of extending it out, which is great news.
It is great, yeah. And, this has been the full police story. Well, the original police story, the sort of like the original and the spin-off of Super Cop. So, yeah, it's all kinds of things. But yes, right now we are here for Police Story 2, or Police Story Part 2. The continuation of the story from Police Story, sort of. Yes, this was released in 1988, and does again sort of follows sort of Hong Kong super cop Jackie Chan. What is Jackie? If ever there was an actor that could just turn up in a film and just be called by his name, amazing. In this case, two sort of stories are taking place. Jackie is now been demoted because of the actions at the end of the last film and the sort of the consequences of both the driving through a Hong Kong slum town and demolishing a shopping center. So he is now on traffic duty. But he is being taunted by the criminals that he put away at the end, who have been released, and sort of taunted and sort of followed around. But more than that, a gang of bombers are going around bombing sort of property, and they're trying to extort money from the property owners. And Jackie is the only person that can track them down. So yeah, this is a good one. But let's get into it. Jack, what are your initial thoughts then on Police Story Part 2?
I think it doesn't have the instantly iconic moments like the first one does. We spoke a lot, didn't we, about like the opening and the closing and how they're pretty perfect, like we wouldn't change anything about them. I don't think it has anything that ever reaches those heights per se, but I think as a film it's consistently better. I think it's a better made movie. I think it has a consistency about its story, although I agree with you, it's kind of 2 hours meshed together somewhere.
Yeah.
But at least each hour has a consistency to it as well.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's a better movie overall, actually. If I was going to go back and watch one or the other, I would go back and watch Police Story 2 before I'd watch Police Story 1, I think, as a movie.
Oh, okay. Interesting. I can see what you're saying, and there's definitely that thing of this definitely feels like a more well-rounded story. Where the first one was, as we sort of said, was kind of like set up to be a stunt fest, wasn't it? It was sort of like 10 minutes of talk, of sort of drama, followed by, set piece, and some of them felt a little bit shoehorned in. This has some of that, I'm not going to lie. But I do agree to an extent that the story sort of fits together and it sort of has the consequences. What I think is interesting as well at the very beginning, because this is the age of VHS, I suppose, but it wants you to remember, like, some of the stuff that happened in the past film. So it's like
a Rocky montage.
It is. I was going to say, so the first sort of like 5 to 7 minutes is literally just a montage of the first film, and it's kind of good. You do watch and you go, "Oh yeah, no, that was ace. I really enjoyed that." But it's what I like is it knowingly then wants to sort of subvert itself by having then Jackie Chan presented as being told off. So it's sort of like it has this, because it uses the same music, dun dun dun, and you get the car going through the slum and all the stunts and everything, and then it's basically Jackie's been pulled up by his superiors for everything. You've just gone, oh, that's awesome, and he's been made a traffic cop. So instead of going for the big opening, they kind of want to sort of subvert themselves by starting smaller, and it kind of works. I kind of like it as an idea.
Yeah, I
So
think it's really interesting. Like we spoke last time about the how this fits in with the trend of Hollywood movies, and I think this is really like anti-Hollywood.
mm,
We are holding you accountable for all that shit you just did,
yeah.
and at this time, we definitely weren't seeing that in the Hollywood movies. You know, as much as I love Die Hard, it's my favorite film of all time. You know, there's no accountability for John McClane. For they kind of threaten it, don't they? At the end, like McClane, we're gonna get you for all of this, and so none of that carries on. The Lethal Weapons, well, not between 1 and 2 anyway. There's no accountability. Interesting, Lethal Weapon 3 kind of steals this idea.
Well, three does it, but has to have action at the beginning for them to be told
Mm,
off for,
that's the
because
exploding
the
multi-story car park,
yeah, that's
or
it with a
mm,
bomb in the bottom of the car park and the cat and all that sort of thing. So
yeah,
they have to sort of because what's funny is what you say at the end of two, you'd think they would be. They literally killed someone by dropping
yeah, shipping container,
a
yeah,
shipping
yeah.
container on them, and it causes an international incident. So they should really have been pulled up for that. But that's besides the point. So yeah, no, I like that this has consequences. It
Mm,
feels like a sequel. Like this literally is a follow on from that film. It's not just another adventure. Um, and so you get a lot of the same characters. You know, he's got May is back as his girlfriend, and the police squad are there, sort of like backing him as well. So, um,
yeah, there's the inspector and there's Bill, wasn't there? I don't know
yeah,
what Bill's title is, but Bill's back as well. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's like his boss, but like
Mm,
not. I'm not entirely sure. Um, but yeah, I like all the characters. So once they're introduced, and you sort of see, he's fired and all this other stuff, or eventually you'll be fired. But the police, I'm like, oh, cool. This feels,
mm,
like a continuation. I enjoy it. Um, you do get what's interesting as well is they tease that there's going to be a big stunt fest at the beginning of the film.
mm,
So I want to call this out. So when he's on his motorbike and you have it, and it's sort of it almost is like a hero shot, and just
mm.
all this stuff, and then you see these big lorries and they're weaving amongst each other and they're doing this thing as they get onto the motorway, and he pulls them over and they get a ticket.
It feels a little bit kind of like Mad Maxy, doesn't it? Like
Yeah,
all these, yeah, like you say, these heavy duty like trucks. They're doing some sort of weird street Fast and Furious street race between them. I'm not sure what's going on. Yeah,
yeah,
I love it. And you're right. The camera's like down by his ankle, isn't it? And then it's panning around and Jackie's off on his bike. Yeah, it's brilliant. And it has that real. I guess it's in here. It's in keeping with how this movie started.
mm,
This sense of almost kind of going against your expectations, as you said, subverting it, not giving you what you expect. The first movie opened up with this massive scene. This one, you thought you were going to get it again, but not
yeah.
this time.
That's it. It keeps wanting to sort of it keeps setting you up to think you're going to get something like that, and then it's
Mm,
like, no, 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 not this time. Um, so I do like that. I do think it's I like it. It's almost like there's a cheeky smile to it. There's a cheeky wink to
mm,
this film throughout. I
mm.
think it does it throughout. Um, but then it quickly sort of like goes from there and starts to build up. Again, you meet May, and there's all these sort of bits and pieces. A lot of the drama sort of is, again, as always, a little bit inconsequential. It's sort of just there to facilitate other things.
Yeah, I feel for Maggie Chung slightly. She's always gets the kind of weakest elements of the movies, doesn't she? So
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah,
I feel a bit sorry for her that she's often given quite a bit to do, but I think your word there is perfect. It's inconsequential. Like nothing really ever comes of it for the first hour of this, anyway.
yes, no, I agree. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And what I would say is about Maggie Chung in this one to sort of what is it? She does do more in this
Mm,
than she did in the
mhm,
first. The first one was just sort of like her putting cake and stuff in Jackie's face and then sort of moaning a lot. That was it. She sort of has her own stunts in this film,
mm. Oh
you
yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah.
and
To the
like
extent that I read that she basically couldn't finish the filming because she got so badly
yeah,
injured in one of the stunts. Yeah.
which I think you see in the credits. Maybe I think there's
Mm.
a few bits, but even like she crashes. There's like a running gag. It almost. This is something I was going to bring up, but she crashes a moped at one point and she like flies off it onto the front of the car, and you're like, man, you actually are going like stunt wise.
Mm.
You're trying to sort of keep up, and that's admirable. Um, but then they get taunted by the criminals that have obviously been released. One of them's been released because, and this is weird, he's released because he's got a terminal illness.
Mhm.
Yet he's still there to taunt Jackie. And his sidekick is going to repeatedly turn up and sort of. You're going to need to explain this one to me because I watched it. This is like the second or third time I've seen this film, and the guy that's been turning up to basically sort of like taunt
Mm.
Jackie and May. I still don't understand like the motivation behind all of it.
I think I mean, he's just like a hired gun, isn't he? Because I think he says
Yeah, he
towards the end,
does.
like, I'm
Yeah,
just because I'm being paid, like, don't hurt me anymore.
but I don't
But
know why. But I don't know why the guy's paying him to do it.
no, and other than I guess because there's an interesting moment slightly earlier, I think, when Jackie Chan's characters they put some labels on him. It's like he's unorthodox, he's hot-headed, he's impulsive. So I guess it's out there that he is this kind of character. So maybe, like you said, this boss which has been released is hoping for him to
Lose his job, I
continue to,
suppose.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, to continue to make these mistakes as he does at the end of the first one, or he loses his head, doesn't he? And he does it in the first hour of this movie when he's being
Mm.
harassed. And it's harassment is the right word. It's like blatant harassment and threat.
Oh yeah, I was
It's
gonna
like,
say.
oh, if you
Yeah.
move, then I'll just follow you and I'll just keep going wherever you go. Like it's not subtle the harassment that he's doing. So yeah, I guess that's the motivation because he can't do anything else, can he? Because
No.
when we do see him, he is very kind of end of his life palliative care.
Later on. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll take it. Let's just take it as that. Then he's doing it basically to sort of try and make Jackie suffer.
Mm,
Um, but because that sort of feels. I mean that it's not even like an instigator for anything.
mm,
Like it doesn't trigger anything else. It results in some relatively good um fight scenes.
hmm.
Like it facilitates a couple of those, but it doesn't. Again, like you said before, it's like 2 hours sort of stuck together a little bit, isn't it? Um, because he does lose his job, um,
He
because of this
resigns, doesn't
harassment.
he?
Well, he resigns, but yeah, because
Mm.
they're not going to back him and stuff. And he's been beating this guy up. And I do like this. This does come to one of my favorite moments where they he comes out of the office. He's basically quit. He comes out of the office, and the guy, this sort of rat faced bastard, is sort of there, and he's sort of saying, "I'll sue you
He's
all. I'll
very
sue you all."
punchable.
Yeah, and then he's broken one lens of his glasses, and this is the running gag. And then Jackie basically lays him out, but you don't see it because two guys like a whiteboard gets sort of like drawn across it, so the chief doesn't see it. And then when the whiteboard's gone, everyone gathers around so you can't see the guy unconscious on his desk. Um, it almost felt like Police Squad level
Mm,
parody at
hmm.
times. But I'm still chuckling at this film. I am enjoying the comedy, and I'm enjoying the sort of like when it sort of kicks. But I'm waiting for
Mm.
the big moment.
I think in general the comedy works better in this.
Yes, I would say so.
There's only really one moment I think when it tips over into that criticism we had of the last one, where scenes went on too long and the comedy was a bit too slapstick and juvenile and it wasn't creative enough. There's one scene like that I can think of in this, but the other comedy, I think the one you mentioned, made trying to tip the bucket of water over the
Mm.
balcony, that is still a little bit slapsticky and a little bit,
But it's good slapstick. It's well
yeah,
timed slapstick. It
agreed,
feels
yeah.
it feels more um natural. It's better. It's much more well timed. So it
Yeah,
feels like it's inevitable, but I agree. It still makes me chuckle.
and the running joke of the guy, like you're right, and there's lots of these little moments. I'm sure we'll get to as we keep talking through the movie. Like, but there are little moments that, as you said,
Mm.
kind of get you chuckling, get you laughing, rather than trying to force a laugh, which the first movie spent way too long trying to do.
Yes, I agree. I think that's the difference, isn't it? This feels a bit more like this one definitely feels more relaxed
Mm,
in general from a because obviously Jackie Chan directed it as well. And it definitely feels a bit more. This is several years later. It's several films later. This feels a bit more confident and a bit more comfortable with
mm.
integrating the action and the comedy and the story. Um, but again, I like the fact that like this film. One of the things I like that this film does repeatedly, actually, we've talked about sort of the beginning. It also is like you say, it subverts Hollywood and but also film expectation throughout. Like we'll
Mm.
come across others as we go. Um, but yeah, it comes to sort of like Jackie and May are sort of the main focus for the first part. He's quit. He tells her he's resigned. She's very happy, and they're going shopping. They're going to a shopping center.
Yeah,
Um,
to get to buy a flight, isn't it, to go away on holiday
yeah, they're
together?
going to
Yeah.
go on holiday, and so I think they're going to go to Bali, or something like that. And but whilst there, all of a sudden he sees some police officers he's known, and they say, can you give us a hand? We've been told there's a bomb threat come through. We're not really sure what to do. they know what to do, but no one's willing to make the decision to
Mm.
evacuate the place. And Jackie does. So he's like, kind of like, what am I going to lose?
Yeah.
Um, and May gets annoyed, but this is where I was going to tap into the lethal weapon thing. So you have them evacuate. The chief turns up and he's like, "Who made this decision?" and all this other stuff. And the police, even the sort of the fire brigade, like, there's no fire. Bombs. I love when the police, like the bomb squad's like, oh, sorry, the fire brigade are sort of like, um, bombs aren't our problem.
Yeah, fair
And
enough.
I'm kind of like, yeah, they're kind of everybody's problem, but like, I appreciate what you're saying. Um, the bomb squad turns up, and then a little boy or little girl comes, like, drops a red ball,
Mm.
and then there's this slow motion scene of this ball,
I knew
like,
you were going to talk about this. I've got my own note about it. I knew you was going to come up.
And in my head, I was like, oh, we're going to get a massive scene. Jackie's going to get blown through a window and all this other stuff. And then he picks it up and walks out. And again, he successfully pulls the rug out from under you.
Mm.
And I was like, well done, Jackie Chan. Well done. That's a well orchestrated, rug pull right there.
Agreed. It made me think, having listened to some of your criticisms of Zack Snyder and particularly of Rebel Moon,
Mm,
how like sometimes Snyder uses slow-mo and you can't quite fathom why.
yeah.
Why is this moment like this isn't like slow-mo when it's done right, we know, like a really cool moment, or much like Jackie Chan repeating a scene over and over and over. We want to
Mm,
see that slowly or over and over and over. Sometimes Snyder, you just kind of left scratching your head wondering why. This is that, but done for clever subversion, comedic
yes.
purposes. It understands why it's using the slow-mo rather than using the slow-mo because it's a gimmick.
Yeah.
I think that's the difference.
100%. I 100% agree. This is Jackie Chan having watched lots and lots of Hollywood action films
Mm.
and gone, I know what you want, and I'm not going to give it to you. It is then followed by a massive explosion because the shopping center does blow up, and it looks great. I mean, it
Mm.
looks. I'm not going to. There's a couple of explosions and scenes in this, and they look ace. Um, and so yeah, we do get sort of what we want in that sense. But I like the fact, I say, it's pulled the rug a little bit. So I'm
Mm.
feeling sort of comfortable in this film. But we've
And I
talked.
think when the action is there, it is up to par. I think
Mm,
it's a bit more brief. I think all the time in this movie, but I think like I said, when we get that explosion and we get a significant one towards the end of the movie, but when
mm.
we get those, that's where the money's gone in this movie, isn't it? Because I think the action
Yeah,
is fast paced, it's well directed, it's of course well choreographed, but lasts a minute or two max each time.
I think that's why it works. It sort of Yeah, it's interesting because I think we get to a scene sort of following this. He gets back on. They're trying to decide like who can do
Mm.
this, who can take on his case. And they sort of use like almost like reverse psychology to get Jackie to take the case. Again, another fun scene where the
Mm.
chief and superintendent and the superintendent and the chief
And
inspector
Bill,
Bill.
I just know him as Bill.
Because I just want to note, like, yeah, because Jackie Chan playing Jackie, and then actually, yeah, Bill Tung is the actor playing Bill Wong. Like, they're really not too sort of like not going to push the boat out. Um, they have this great conversation where they're like, "Oh, well, what do we do? How do we know? How do we investigate this?" And then he jumps in and says, "Well, there's only three kinds of explosives that could be done at this, and dynamite's a controlled substance, and and he basically takes them through it, and then all of a sudden he's like, what, feels he's been pulled into it, and then because of everything, he's missed his plane,
Mm.
um, and so he ends up sort of going undercover and doing all this other stuff.
Again, another good gag because May's still on the plane.
Yeah,
So he gets called off the plane, doesn't he? Like a hostess, air steward comes in,
yes,
drags him off. He's got all the passports and all the paperwork, and he's in like an interview room with him, isn't he? Like
mm,
discussing all of this, and he comes back saying like, "I know I'm not going to get involved,"
I've got a
and,
plane to catch.
and literally the plane's
Yes.
taken off. So again, like another, as you said, almost like police academy, police squad, Naked Gun style, silly gag, but
Mm.
totally works in the moment.
Oh, 100%. I think, yeah, they're all timed well in
Hmm.
this one, which is why I think it works. And it pays off as well. Like, it's one of those where, like, it could have gone one way, you know, but it'll go another. Like they make good choices, I think, in this.
Yeah,
Um,
and helps to remove. I mean, I don't mean this in a critical way of the actress, but helps to remove May for a little while as well. A logical choice because we
mm,
sort of needed now. We need a stretch where he's getting back into the job and he's getting drawn back in, and not constantly flitting between those two worlds. So again, like a gag that works in the moment, but also serves a further purpose.
mm, yes, it does. And we then get the because what thing we have said we haven't talked about a fight scene yet.
No, there was just that one brief one when he goes to see, is it John Coe, the guy that's been harassing him in the restaurant, isn't there? Just that
Yeah,
one,
which is
which was
good.
good.
I gotta say,
Lots
it
of
is
smashing
good.
glass, I noticed.
Yeah, it's
Whether
sort
that
of
was meant to be
I
an
think it's like
homage
I
to.
thought it's an homage to the end one. It's very brief. It has some
Mm,
good stunts in it, and it ends with a truck, a small truck
mm,
driving through the restaurant. But yeah, it it's not epic enough to me to go, oh yeah, it's just that. It feels like a well done fight scene, but there's a
mm.
couple of bits in it. But there is one coming up that I was really impressed with. Like I really enjoy. I think you'll know which one it is, and we'll get to it. Um, but yeah, they do this investigation. They've got to go like plant a bug in this office, and I was it has a fart gag in a lift.
That's the only one which feels a bit
Yeah,
police story one.
yeah. Where I was like, this doesn't need this,
Mm,
but I think it almost feels a bit like because it doesn't serve any purpose, and it doesn't really, it doesn't kind of work. Um,
so, yeah, no, I guess it leads on to later, doesn't it? Bill's got a bad stomach from something he's eaten.
yeah,
But in that moment, yeah, it's very much like, Liar Liar kind of does that joke when he's in the lift,
it was me. Yeah,
and that works quite well in that. I mean, it's that is much more silly and slapstick. Yeah, there's something about this joke that doesn't work, and I think it's even greater highlighted by immediately afterwards when Jackie's hiding in the boardroom, and there you have this kind of like comedy, situational comedy, don't you?
mm.
Kind of farcical, and that's clever and inventive. And then a moment ago, it was the most base fart joke with almost like a iTunes sound button for the fart
Yeah. I thought the
as
same.
well.
I
So,
thought that like this sounds like an app. This is someone with a
mm,
like with a fart gag kind of thing. Yeah. Um. So yeah, but again, like all this stuff, like planting the bug and doing the bits and pieces, like that's all still working,
mm,
like, and I think it's a credit to this film that we're not, I'm not sat there going, I wish there was a fight scene, I
mm,
wish there's, like, I'm enjoying the story as it goes. Um, because they are now obviously investigating the explosion and they're investigating the company that owns the property.
mhm.
That's sort of the direction of it all going. But one of the things is they then utilize the subplot at this point. So the thing that sort of started the film becomes sort of a subplot of these
Mm.
people harassing him. I'm trying to think of the order. I'm sure this is the order, and it ends up with the fight scene because we then meet that May's come back.
Yeah.
She was deported, and I like that again. Like she's all wet. It's in the rain. She was deported because he had her passport.
Mhm.
Um. So and it works, and she's still angry with him and all sorts of stuff. Like, and the thing is, I would say that May and Jackie's relationship in this works interestingly as well. Like May, I'm kind of proud of May a little bit in this by the
Mm.
end of the film because she's sort of like they've been followed and she's moved out and then they've been followed to her aunt's house. Is it mum or
Her
aunt? I can't
mum's
remember.
house, yeah.
Mum's house. Her mum's apartment. The threats have continued. She's but even like I say, Maggie Chung has had some good moments. She's done some minor stunts and stuff. But throughout this, like she is rightfully pissed at Jackie
Mm.
for getting back in the job and for doing all this other stuff. And eventually she'll be like, I'm kind of done with this.
Yeah.
And so the fact she
And
doesn't
this is the
stick,
scene, isn't it, where she sort of
yeah,
says, "This is the final straw. Like I've had it." She has good agency, I agree, and a really well designed scene because it
mm,
happens in the male locker room in the showers. So there's loads of
yeah,
guys who are like naked, like
yeah,
literally naked, like quickly covering themselves up and all this kind of stuff going on as she is taking agency for herself and saying like none of this macho bullshit anymore. None of this like you're in charge.
yeah,
Actually, Bill gets called out for being a chauvinist
Yes.
for being almost a little bit misogynistic in this scene as well. So it's a really cleverly choreographed and designed scene in that way, and that she's literally surrounded by men, and she's saying like, "I'm done with this life. I'm done with you and this world." It's great.
But there's also the other thing is the May in the first film in that situation would have realized she's in a men's locker room and gone, "Oh," and ran off.
That's true. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
In this
Actually,
one, she's like, "No, I'm done. Like, you're all idiots. This is ridiculous." And I kind of that's why I'm pleased that they gave her that May something in this film.
Mm.
Um, and then is this does this when we get to the playground scene? If I think this is
Yeah.
the
So then he sort of, yeah, she essentially breaks up with them, doesn't she? And then we get
yes.
this weird Woody Allen-esque montage after this with them two sitting on the steps in a park with over the course of like an afternoon,
Mm,
not talking to each other essentially, and like the light changing around them and the scene changing around them. Not quite what's the word? Not like a time lapse, not quite time lapse,
no,
but
it's not
clearly
edits,
they've
just
been there.
cuts, doesn't it? Sort of like
Yeah. And then you're right, then John Coe and the gang come to get them.
And this, I like this. Yes, and he comes with a bunch of guys, and I like this scene. I think this scene is again, this is pure Jackie Chan. This is
Mm.
oh, I've got a playground. Let's use what we've got. And some of this scene is bone crunchingly painful to watch.
Yeah,
Um,
the inventiveness of, as we can, I think people, if they haven't seen it, they can probably imagine this in their mind now of like, what can Jackie Chan do in a playground? The inventiveness of how he uses all the climbing frames and the
yeah,
slides and the objects all around him. But you're right, not in a childish way,
no,
in a total ass whipping way.
yeah. There's a scene where a guy gets kicked and he sort of flies backwards and he sort of folds up and goes between two of the steps in the climbing frame, and not like gracefully, like he hits it and then like falls through.
Much
And
like
then,
those two guys we said about in the bus scene in the police story, how like
mm,
that looks painful. Get the stretchers for them.
yeah,
Several of these guys are being carried off in a stretcher too.
yes, oh, 100%. There's a couple of like, yeah, people landing awkwardly and stuff, rolling away from it. It's done. It is brutal and it is done very, very well. Um, Bone crunching, but it's fun, and that's the thing.
Mm.
It's well timed, it's well choreographed, as you say. And it's fun to watch, and it's Jackie sort of doing his thing. And one thing I like is like one of the things I like about Jackie Chan fight scenes. I've realized is although Jackie is the star, there's still no ego.
Mm.
He'll beat them
Hmm.
and stuff, but it's not like he's not like coming in and just sort of decimating everybody. Like
Hmm.
there will be a bit of that probably in some films and some scenes, but like he takes a kicking in this. Like he'll take hits and he'll make mistakes, and it's like doing things by the skin of his teeth. Like that's the
Mm.
point, isn't it?
That's really interesting. I'm going to read my note word for word here. Jackie Chan is always makes sure he isn't untouchable, even if he's ultimately unbeatable. I
Yes,
think that's exactly right. Like, again, like not quite wrestling, but he has to kind of be knocked down to get back up, to look like he's going to lose. To it has that almost kind of like storytelling sense within his fights too, like wrestling does.
100%. And this is where I actually watched, and it's not in this retrospective, but I know you've seen it as well. I watched Armor of God
Hmm.
last night. Um, and so I've watched that as well, sort of, and watch it. And one of the things I realized, sort of, seeing him do a lot of the stunts in that is, and that because that has similar ideas, and there's some amazingly like inventive fight scenes in that. Um, but he obviously was raised in a Chinese or Hong Kong um, opera school. So it was all about the dancing, all about the gymnastics, all about that sort of thing, the discipline and all that kind of thing. But in the service of telling a
Hmm.
story that was a part of the opera. So I think it's always been there in him, hasn't it? That this idea of you can tell a story through performative,
Mm.
dance or and gymnastics. Like it's there. And so I think, yeah, like just like wrestling, as you say, and I think it's a real credit to him that when he does choreograph these fights, they are there to tell a story and to make you feel like, oh my God, this is not just a bone cruncher. There's a sort of a purpose to a lot of things he does, and he's going to use the sort of scenery compared to say I don't know, any of the major Hollywood action stars where, you know, I'd be interested to think about that. Like, you know, because again, I think about like The Raid and Raid 2 as another example, or
Mm.
there's a couple of others where it's clear that you know, martial artists, even sort of like Scott Adkins does it, when it's a true martial artist, they know how to sort of like take it up, bring it down, take it up, bring it down.
Mm.
Like they know how to sort of, you know, use the stakes. But when you go back to those original action stars, it was just like up, 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 up kind of thing. Um, so yeah, no, it is good, and I love that one you've said that. I love the way you said that. Sort of that's you know, what did you say? Sort of, no,
Oh,
he's not.
he isn't untouchable, but he's ultimately unbeatable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
love that. It's a great line.
And I think
Um,
Atkins is the inheritor of that. I mean, you know, I love the Staith, but I mean, I think
mm,
he's fallen into that trap later in his career, having joined the Fast and Furious franchise of this. You know, if I get punched 5 times, I've got to punch them 5 times, and all
yeah,
this bullshit
exactly.
that supposedly goes on in their contracts. There, I still like those movies, but there's
Mm,
a lot of that stuff which takes away from it a little bit. But like, yeah, Atkins again is happy to get his ass handed to him. I mean, in his latest movie, in that One More Shot, which I watched recently, he
mm.
his character literally gets knocked out and he loses the fight, but because there's so much else going on, you know, he's got the time to kind of recover and
Recover and
get
that.
back into it. So yeah, he's more than happy
Yeah,
to 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 take a beating too, as long as he wins in the end, of course.
yeah, that's the point. But you sort of need that. Yeah, yeah. You know, you need that possible vulnerability
Hmm.
to increase the stakes. And I think Jackie Chan knows that. You know, and he will increase the stakes. So you know, this is a good fight scene. It
Hmm.
ends with the usual thing of um the guy with the glasses, what's his name? Um
John Coe,
John Coe. That's yeah.
I think.
His glasses, like he tries to run away, runs into a sign and breaks his glasses again. Like it's kind of it's a fun running gag. I gotta say, it's a you know um it does work well. So beyond that though, this is where the film starts to sort of switch up.
Mhm.
So you it feels a little bit like we've kind of dealt with that story, and we're now going to focus in on the bombers and
Yeah,
all that.
because this is when he meets the rest of the team, isn't it? There's already like
Mm,
a team that's been assembled who clearly all know each other and have done other missions together.
I
And
love
it's
this
like,
team.
oh, they're great. Absolutely, yeah. They're
They're
great.
amazing. I want to film with this. This was what I was like. They need a spin off. Like
Mm.
this is the one I want to spin off of. Like this cool Hong Kong police squad. I was like, I want these.
Yeah,
Um,
they are. Yeah, they're all of them. And actually, considering they don't really have names or they don't really have any key moments of action as such, everyone has enough character in the bits that they do, whether it's their
yeah,
costume design or the way they say a line or yeah, each of them, like as you said, maybe not have a movie of their own, but I would definitely have watched
a
a
team
series
movie.
of movies about this.
Yeah.
Yeah, little.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they're great.
Yeah. It was, and again, you know, talking about because we said about the last film was you know had that sort of like misogynistic overtones and the rape joke in it was is has not aged well, wasn't even good at its time, you
Mm,
know, that sort of thing. This film definitely is leaning. And we're going to get to Super Cop next, and
mm.
you know we'll talk about that when we get to it. But there's definitely this more leaning into giving women agency because of the this police squad that we meet, and even their leader, like the guy who sort of runs it, is I couldn't get. Um, have you seen Cowboy Bebop?
I have not. No.
Right. Yeah, it was just as a character in that, and he was just like that. He just felt like an anime character. Like I know these are
Hmm.
Hong Kong and that's Japanese, but like that just sort of like Asian cool. You know what I mean? Where it's like
Yeah,
you go, oh man, you're cool. Like you just
I,
sort of
it's a bit of an infernal affairs for me.
yes,
The like the Departed
yeah,
inspiration, yeah, or the movie which The Departed made. Again, that has that kind of like coolness about it,
mm,
and these guys have a coolness about them,
yeah.
definitely.
But the main ones we'll get to know about are there's three female officers, and they bring in this guy, and again, well, you know, we'll talk about how they bring him in, but they get their moment, and it's great. But one of the that Jackie ends up going undercover to get this guy who is a um not weapons, sorry, like explosives. So he's illegally selling explosives
Yeah,
and the
yeah. I
bits.
think he works in like demolition or building or something
Yeah,
like
and
that.
he's
But
been
he's
selling
yeah.
off
Mhm.
bits and pieces. So you get Jackie Chan goes to a restaurant in a really dodgy fake mustache.
It's
Um,
great. But I like the
and
messiness of it that he's drinking a pint and he's worried the whole time about
yeah,
the fact his
yeah,
fake
he keeps sort
moustache
of
is going to
straightening
fall
it
off.
every time, which is it is kind of cool. Um, it's kind of this is where it sort of there's like an intricacies of the plot because it does kind of get this
Mm.
is where it's not just fighty. He confronts the guy and his girlfriend and he says, "Oh yeah, I can get you in contact," and he doesn't believe he's straight up, so he literally calls CID on Jackie, which is they're like a part of the police department, and Jackie has to beat them up without sort of doing any real damage. Um, get away and then track this guy down again. Um, but again, a nice, neat little fight scene in a
Mm.
restaurant with the guns. I like he gets the guns and he sort of does his bit and then he tracks them down. Then this bit is where there was a little bit of oh, so he tracks the guy back to his apartment and this guy's come back with his girlfriend and there's like a punch gag where he punches the
Mm.
guy, slaps the woman, punch the guy, slap the woman, and they go for a third time and she just goes whoa, and sort of he stops. Um, and I'm not sure how I feel about that.
I know, yeah, I completely agree with you. But I think that is, although we're celebrating it for its agency and if it's stronger female characters, I think that is something that's still there. This sense of
Mm.
there is still this patriarchal, want of a better word, there probably is a better word, but this sense of like I'm the man and you're the
Oh,
woman.
it's machismo. This film is
Yeah, and it
despite
is
everything
called
we're
out
saying.
at times, which I think is really
Yeah.
interesting. Like Bill's called out, actually Jackie's called out as well
Mm.
for by the team that he joins. The sense of like you doing it in this one way, and there's different ways to do things, and that's why we're a team and we work better. But there's underlying, there's still that kind of, I guess, pervading sense of machismo,
Mm.
masculine ownership of power. I think is still there somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, as you say, like what you said before, like he has a vulnerability, but at the end of the day, Jackie's got to be the one man army that goes on the rampage um against
Mm.
the baddest. That's sort of that's what you want. Whilst you and I are saying we want that team spin-off, which I'd love to have seen. This isn't that, and this is the Jackie Chan film. So despite introducing them, it's still going to be Jackie Chan taking on multiple people at the end. That's still going to
Mm.
be
Hmm.
the way it ends. Um, but he figures this guy out, brings him in so they can interrogate him, and we do get a hell of a fun interrogation scene. Where he sat there and you have these three very attractive Chinese women sort of just saying, do you want a cigarette? Can we get you a drink? Can we do anything else?
It's
And
like a
he,
seduction to begin with, isn't it? Yeah.
yeah, so he gets a bit sort of relaxed. He's like, oh, I can handle this. This is all right. This is, and then all of a sudden, like they flip it up and just give him a rinsing, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and it's again, it's a really well done scene. Um, and it was this point where I was like, I was kind of, it's after this scene, I'm kind of disappointed that they sort of leave the film a bit.
Yeah, I really like this stretch, and we spoke about Police Story had like kind of at times had that 70s vibe, particularly the
Yeah.
opening, and it kind of comes back here, I think,
Mm.
with this interrogation scene, and then from this they learn the character the person who sold the bomb stuff to is called Polar Bear,
Yeah.
and what his location is, and then we get this whole quite a long 5-10 minute sequence of the team all working together to
Mm.
tail him, and they have to when they use taxis and bikes and they were in the subway at one point, and I love that scene on the subway where they're all kind of surrounding him, and some get on the train and some don't, so he doesn't realize he's being tailed, and then some stay on the train and some get off, and it's a really clever scene. It's like a
Yeah.
Mission Impossible, and I mean it's like the '60s TV show Mission Impossible sequence.
Yeah.
It's great. I really love this segment of the movie. So I agree with you. Although we know it's going to end up with the last 20 minutes of Jackie storming the compound and taking
Mm.
on everyone and winning. I think maybe this is why I prefer this to the first one because I find this section really elevates everything.
No, I agree. I almost feel like it's kind of disappointing that it gets introduced and then they never contribute to the finale.
Mm, hmm.
in any real way. And I think I do get kind of like um I don't know. It's like introducing like really cool characters, isn't it? You get teased with them, and then it's like, okay, well, we're going to leave them there. You're like, oh man, that's
Mm.
the disappointment of it. But that's not to say I still want to see Jackie Chan do his thing, um, but yeah, they tail this guy, and then is this the mute, isn't it? The guy who's deaf and dumb and stuff. And
Yes. He's like
again,
he's the bomb maker, isn't he?
yes,
He's been putting them in like little remote control cars. He's got all these different kind of. It's interesting seeing when they meet him because they're in this like abandoned warehouse, aren't they? And they wait for Polar
mm,
Bear to leave, and then Jackie and I think one of the guys from the first movie, they go in and they come across him, and I couldn't quite tell as viewers whether we were supposed to know straight away because you do know, but maybe that's because we've watched too many of these movies. But you kind of
yeah,
know straight away. You don't trust this guy. He's clearly in on it, but he's playing it off as if he's just a homeless guy that's living
mm,
in the warehouse. And even at that point, I wasn't sure if he was truly deaf or mute or anything like that. So it's a really interesting scene. Obviously, it becomes much more problematic later on in the movie as we see more of this character.
yeah. I thought originally again because again I'd forgotten quite a bit of this ending. I thought this was leading to a gag where like, he was going to pretend to be sort of like deaf and mute, and then all of a sudden, like he thinks they've gone, and he's gone like he'll be like, oh, glad I got out of that one, and they're like, ha ha. That
Mm.
was I was almost expecting that, and then it doesn't, and you're like, oh, okay, they're taking it forward, like um, which is fine, but like you say, it sort of leads to some. We'll talk about the ending later in a short while.
Yeah, it's uncomfortable.
Yeah. But you're right. Yes, it sort of they have this confrontation with him. It's sort of they think they've got information, but they can't, so they sort of leave him there.
They do that classic thing where like, oh no, one of them, oh no, he's deaf, so they start shouting at him.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's really not going to help.
Yeah.
That makes no
Yeah.
difference. But again, it's kind of it could be uncomfortable, but I think at that point it's a knowing joke.
But it makes them look silly. That thing is,
It
it's not.
does, yeah,
This is the thing where at this point the joke is on Jackie and his partner.
yeah,
That's
that's
where the
fair.
joke lies. Just about.
Hmm.
It'll shift later, but yeah, it's fine. And then they obviously that's it. Then I think they sort of
He proves they have a fight down, and he proves himself to be a badass. Basically, he's
oh, that's right. Yeah, he's
really
kind of like
fast and
yeah, he's pretty nimble and sort of
mm,
and all that. And so it does. It's interesting how again the joke's not on him at this point. Like they've shown him to be um a good fighter. He's able to handle
mhm.
himself. So I'm trying to remember what this leads to now because it leads to um
So they've sort of blown it at that point, haven't they? Because he
yeah,
escapes, so they know they can't like this stakeout is not going to help anymore. And then because of that, the rest of the bomb making team realized the guy must have given them up. So they capture the dynamite selling guy, don't they?
yes,
And send him in to the police station.
with a bomb in a
Yeah.
briefcase.
Whilst
Um,
also sending the bomb to the office because the deadline for the next money payment's coming up.
this is it. This I forgot about it. I forgot about it. This is you're right because
It's
this
like
is
the next day, noon the next day or something.
yeah, but this is where this film's odd, and this is the thing we've said about how well the comedy is in this and how it's sort of working, and then it sort of flicks to these things like you say where it's like a 70s crime drama or even like a more action film. These two bombs going off.
Mm.
I don't know how they did it, right? Because there's some good editing going, especially for the one in the police station. Like you see the guy carrying it on, and
Mm.
it looks like you see part of an explosion, and then it cuts to the outside. So it looks like that bomb in the briefcase went off in some capacity, and for them to film some of it. That's one. The one in the office, you see you hear because a woman receives a bouquet of flowers, doesn't she?
Mm.
You hear it go off, and then you just see this woman sort of hit the wall and collapse. And I was a bit like, oh my God, like
Yeah.
this is not the tone of someone having like water poured on their head by accident, or
No,
like
that's true.
the jokey tone sort of disappears, and there's, it's kind of like yeah, I don't know. It's sort of I don't mind the tonal shift
Mm,
because it sort of sticks around a little bit
mm.
as
I
well.
don't. Yeah, I don't think there's really anything of that jokiness from this point forwards.
No,
Not deliberately, anyway.
no,
There's
no.
moments which are uncomfortably kind of laughing at it in an uncomfortable way, as we'll get to.
Yeah.
And also, like, to do with this, I had to write this dialogue down because I paused the movie and I had to rewind it and watch it again because I was like, did I miss something? Because you're right, this secretary, this receptionist
Mm.
gets blown up
Yeah,
essentially,
yeah.
isn't she? She's opening the mail and it's either in the flowers or in a
In a
parcel.
parcel
She
or
gets
something.
blown up. And in the next scene, we go back to the unit. They're all talking, and Jackie's getting bollocked because they didn't manage to stop the bomb.
Mm.
And one of the unit coming in, they're like, Miss Wong's lost an arm, which I assume is the
The
receptionist. And
receptionist.
it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
and everyone's like, oh my God, this is terrible. Like, of course they are. At the same time, obviously, we've had this big bomb go off in the police station. I guess nobody really got injured, and they
Well,
don't seem to
saying that,
mention it, do
there's a police officer at the reception desk.
they? Good point. Yeah, no, I don't remember that ever coming up.
No.
But what I thought was hilarious, almost like Miss Wong lost an arm, and then that's the end of that scene. Cut, like, oh, this is terrible news. Obviously, it is. And then in the next scene, the same actress delivering a line says, "The doctor said her arm will recover." Sorry,
Yeah,
will
yeah.
it? Is she a lizard?
Yeah, it's growing back. Miss Gecko is doing very well.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
Yeah,
So there's some unintentional comedy,
yeah.
unfortunately.
That someone's not caught that one. That's that's quite
But
good.
like I said, I was like, what? So I literally stopped the movie. I've got to rewind this. Have I missed something here? But no, 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 that's definitely what I said.
Yeah. Um, but you're right. This is where this film sort of switches up. Like the comedy's sort of gone, and we're switching up to a scene. And they obviously going to take it serious now. The
Mm.
bombers are like, they've made their extortion claims. They want the money, and in order to get it, they're going to sort of put a plan together, and they kidnap May.
Yes. Yeah.
But May thinks, sorry, Jackie thinks that May has been kidnapped by Mr. Chu, the villain from the first film, and so he tracks him down and breaks into his house, and there's some usual stuff of some gymnastics and some sort of like parkour style things and a couple of
Mm.
fights. But what we find out is that he's on death's door and he's in a medical bed, and there's there's basically like three groups of people around him asking for money.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
There's clearly like a lawyer. There's the Jung-gu you've talked about, and then the nurse is a lot going, no, he doesn't die until he's paid us. Um, and so I kind of like all that. I think that's again, it's one of those sort of weirdly off kilter and kind of uncomfortable jokes,
Mm.
but it's still funny to me when they're all like, "Oh no, we're going to protect him, but because he owes us money."
Yeah. So yeah, yeah.
Um,
I
so
think it
yeah,
becomes important later on. I
mm,
think I think there is that way that can be taken the wrong way, that scene. But later, when Jackie gives his big speech, I think it ties into this scene quite nicely.
mm,
So we had the big speech in Police Story One, didn't we? About like we have mothers too, and we matter, and although we're police, we're not, we're still human beings. And there's a big speech here later on about like crime doesn't pay, and the life of crime is terrible, and you shouldn't get involved in this, and you're harming other people. Money isn't the most important thing, and that's his big speech in this one, which kind of makes sense that we've had this scene of like this guy who was at the top of the game, but he still died of an illness, and he couldn't do anything about that. And when he died, nobody really cared about him. They were all
just
just
the
looking
money
for
he was there
money.
for. Yeah, yeah. That's a really good point. I like that. I made that connection. That really does work, and it pays off. I like that they're putting a bit of a bow on the
Mm,
subplot as well that they started with the first film, and they're following that through because he was ill. But they figured out that yeah, he's not. It wasn't Mr. Chu that kidnapped May, and so Jackie is going to go and find because he now knows it's the bombers. And he tracks them down,
he get
and
doesn't I think he gets picked. Does he get picked up?
Oh, he does, doesn't he? You're right. Yes, because he's tied up, isn't he? So
They
he
like
gets.
tell him like we've got May, and they kind of
Mm,
pick him up and bring him, but you've got to
yeah,
come alone. Yeah.
and yeah, this is again where like even the slight comedy of the sort of thing with Mr. Chu is gone. So you go to the next scene, and it goes to an interrogation scene. Jackie is tied up in like a two bits of wood really that sort of can be
Mm.
winched up, and they're saying to him like, this is what's going to happen. Like we've got May. This is what's going to happen. You're going to get the money for us, and you're going to return it. And if you don't, we're going to basically start cutting bits off May for all intents and purposes.
Yeah, they evidence like all the different types of bombs they've got, don't they? And
Yeah, the ones
they've
with
got the
the
remote
remote
control
control.
car. Yeah, because they drive it towards his groin, don't they? They lower him down and drive a car towards his groin. Yeah.
I've just remembered something I want to check whilst we're talking.
Mm.
Um, yeah, and because they drive it into, but before they drive one into a sofa, don't they, to show that the sofa blow up, and then they threaten to do it in him. Um,
And this is what will be happening to May if you don't do what we ask you to do. Yeah.
yeah. Um, so there you go. So yes, and then it leads to a scene that I was kind of like at first, I was like, I'm not sure how this will all play out. Um, but it sort of Jackie keeps saying no, I'm not going to do it. You can't make us. The strong tough guy. And then they get a whole load of basically firecrackers or like
Mm.
little cherry bomb things.
I know what you mean. I can't think of what they're called. Like they're little like white parcels, aren't they? You get them from like fairs and stuff nowadays, don't you? Like
Yeah,
you throw them off one and they go pop, but they're big versions of them, aren't they?
yes. Um, and so yeah, it's that sort of yeah. But they usually the ones we get are a lot smaller, and they
Yeah, they
go
go like
pop. That's about
yeah,
it.
yeah.
These are clearly these are clearly a little bigger, and they start throwing them at Jackie Chan.
Yeah, they're sort
Uh,
of dumpling sized, I say, aren't they?
yeah, oh yeah, yeah,
Mm.
and they are kind of big. Right, same year. So the thing I wanted to check is, and
Mm.
it's the same year, is the film. There's a Dirty Harry film. It's the last of the Dirty Harry films. Actually, it's the Deadpool, and in that it includes a remote control car with a bomb attached to it.
Interesting.
So I just thought, oh, that's interesting. Same year, same year. So that's just really, remote control cars were big in 1988.
Yeah, we'll see.
Um, but this scene where he's getting the things thrown at him, like at first I was like, oh, this feels like it's got to be a special effect or it's got to be,
Mm.
like it's. I was watching it going like, okay, they're not really throwing this stuff at him. Move to the credits.
Yeah.
Oh no, these are explosives, and they are throwing them at Jackie Chan. And at one point, he gets one straight in the face.
Mm.
And so this is one of those things where you go, this felt a little unnecessary. I didn't need this level of authenticity um for this. So
Yeah, there's like two main things in them credits for this movie, I think. It's Jackie Chan on fire
yeah,
and it's people with head injuries.
yes,
Like that's kind of the whole end credits is about for these two things. Lots of blood from head injuries and Jackie Chan on fire
yeah.
consistently.
That seems to be the two big bits.
Yeah.
But it was noted because when you realise that they are clearly doing something, they then turn and throw them at May. So
Mm.
Maggie Chung gets a bunch of these thrown at her as well. So again, fair play to her. She takes some hits in this. She takes some real hits, and we'll get to the end, and
Yeah.
she takes the legit hits. So he agrees to do it, and they put a bomb vest on him. And he goes off to get the money and this other stuff, and then we get quite a cool scene with the car, and then Jackie
Oh
trying to sort
yeah.
of like
Another
um
almost kind of like procedural scene, another 70s kind of I love it. So
yeah.
he goes and gets the money, doesn't he? But and like telling the police to all go away and then drives off in the car, but he manages to get a couple of tools on the way.
Mm.
And then he parks the car in a tunnel, doesn't he?
So because they say that when he's underground they can't follow. They've got like a tracker on him and stuff,
Yeah,
and they lose him because he's in the tunnel. And I
so the
like
signal
this.
won't connect to the bomb vest. So he
Yes.
starts pulling out wires from the car and like trimming the casing off the wiring and rewiring and then
Yeah.
breaking the lock at the top. It's a brilliant scene, and again,
It's really
goes on for
tense.
quite a while.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Well, people run up to him because he basically pulls into the
Yeah.
tunnel, doesn't he? And people are like, "You're blocking the tunnel." He's like, "Back off! We've got a bomb vest on."
but it's like technical, and there's like thought to it,
Yeah.
and as you said, tension, and yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah, especially the bit like it's funny because it has a moment where he has like some pliers or some clippers, and he's got this metal like collar on it, hasn't it? He's got to cut through.
Oh,
And
yeah, I know the shot. Yeah,
yeah, it kind of has like it has this really out of nowhere, like it has this weird shot of his like his arm,
his rippling bicep.
just
Yeah,
rippling arm, and I'm like, it's kind of weird. This is not that film. This is not Commando or like
yeah.
Rocky 4. This is a very different film. Yes, you are ripped. We know that, Jackie. That's fine. Um, but I like it as well because it's sort of it has that tension. He gets everyone out of the way and then leaves it in the tunnel.
I was going to say, like, as all these things do end, just runs off and leaves that bomb in the tunnel. Just all those members of public around.
Yeah, but he's still got the black. He's got these like black dots all over him where he's had the things thrown at him. And there was part of me going like, is that makeup or are those like legit wounds that he's now got? That he's
Probably.
like, we're
Probably the
keeping.
latter.
Yeah, we're probably keeping for continuity. So yeah, he sort of escapes that, and the bomb goes off in the tunnel, doesn't it?
No, I don't think so.
No,
I
it
think he
doesn't.
just
No,
runs off and he just leaves it there. I think he like calls out like, call the police, there's a bomb, and he does the classic Jackie Chan running
sprint.
away.
Yeah. And that's it then. Like he sort of like we're building then really to the end now. He's going to save May.
Yeah. Now we're into that like kind of classic, as you said, like that one man.
This is the one man
damsel
army
in distress.
section.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, a bunch of bad guys that I've got to defeat. Yeah.
Yeah. And we get some great chases. That include this is where this is because basically he knows he's got to get to one of the guys because he knows he's got to get to the rest of them so he can get to May.
So he goes back to where he knows they were like the
and there's
safe
no
house
one
they're
there.
keeping at, and he does this really cool stunt where he jumps on a bus and then jumps on a lorry and jumps on a rooftop.
Yeah,
and
through a glass pane.
Yeah, and then that's where he finds out from one guy, doesn't he, that they've gone to
they're somewhere else.
The fireworks factory, as it turns out.
Yeah. But again, a great scene. There's a great scene where he's on top of the bus. And we get some of the gymnastics where there's like a set of flags and he like jumps under one, goes under another, and then that sort of thing. So
yeah,
I'm waiting for every film now needs a bus stunt. That's
yeah,
it
true.
now.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it's a great sort of, especially when he runs and like just hurls himself through that pane of glass.
I think I read he mistimed it and went through the wrong. So he went through the glass, not the sugar glass.
Right.
So he hit the wrong pane, I think.
Yeah, because in the end credits you see him and there's a bit where he is looking like absolutely dazed. It reminded me of, and again, I this is a strange tangent. There's I'm a wrestling fan, and there was I don't know your history with the old school sort of WWF, WWE. There was it's 1999's King of the Ring, or around that, maybe 99, maybe 2000. And there was a match. It was a sort of a no holds bars match between Kurt Angle and Shane McMahon.
Okay, I know the names.
And so Kurt Angle known for his suplexes. And he's basically him and Shane McMahon fight up the ramp, fight to the platform, the big entrance. And there's these glass panes, and on each plane is like the symbol, the big thing that says King of the Ring, that sort of thing. And he grabs Shane McMahon and German suplexes him, and he's supposed to go through this pane of glass. And Kurt Angle's slightly concussed from another move that hasn't gone particularly well. But anyway, Shane doesn't go through the glass. So he tries it, suplexes him again, doesn't happen. So Kurt Angle just picks him to his feet and lamps him through it head first.
Oh.
And then later on, it turned out exactly as you say, they were using the wrong glass. So he went through like a legit pane of glass. And so knowing that, I was like, man, lesson. Always remember which pane of glass you're supposed to go through. Like that seems to be a rule of thumb. But yes, he gets this guy over, doesn't he? They jump in their red car, which is he's known to be in, and he has his gun on him and threatens him, and they go to the firework factory. And then that's it. Really, it becomes just like a massive sort of like multi-level chase throughout. to sort of like to get those and to get May. And this is almost hard to describe because it just goes from like stunt to um thing like you say using different bits and pieces. There are some uncomfortable bits. What I would say is when I was watching this the other night, um I'd been watching it and Alex was in the other room just doing some of the bits and pieces and she came in and she wasn't intending to stay and she's not a big fan of like action films and stuff. But you know when Jackie has the fight and then jumps onto the chain to sort of like to climb up,
Yeah.
she sort of stopped and she was like, "What did he just do?" And I was like, "Oh, he did this. Let's do. I'll quickly show it again." And then that was it. She sort of sat for the finale, and then she was like, "This is insane. Like, is this all stunts?" And I was like, no, I think she said, "Is this like, oh, is that can't be real?" And I was like, "Oh no, no,
Yeah.
wait." And I said to her, "Wait for the credits, and then you'll see." What are your thoughts on this fight on this end sort of melee?
I think it's brilliant. It's epic, isn't it?
Mm.
I think I like what you said there. Like it's multi-leveled, but I
Yeah,
mean that's like literal. Like it's up and down and constantly changing. Like there's one stunt where Jackie gets kicked and he falls down like a chimney or like a chute. And again, a bit like the one we spoke about in Police Story, he's like bouncing off and lands awkwardly at the end. And yeah, I think it's bruising, but actually, he gets his revenge. He kicks both. He doesn't kick not the deaf mute guy, but the other two guys both get kicked out of windows to have their
yeah,
own pretty hardcore falls. Um, yeah, I think the inventiveness, the risk they take, and it's constantly reinventing itself. So each fight is different because each
yeah.
guy's different skill sets. And the raid is a great shout. I think it's almost like leveling up each time.
Mm.
The first guy kind of disposes with fairly easily. Then Polar Bear is another challenge, and then the final guy is like kind of the deaf mute guy, isn't it? With
Yeah,
his abba abba saying or whatever it is that's the uncomfortable part when he's vocalizing in the way that he
yeah.
can. He sounds a bit like Gizmo or something, doesn't he, from Gremlins?
Yeah, yeah, we'll get to that in a second because I do. Yeah, that's where it gets a bit uncomfortable.
But he is very like the actor, the performer
Mm-mm.
is
Immense.
not. Yeah, he's skilled. He's fast paced. He's the hardest guy to defeat. It's just
Yeah,
unfortunate they've given him this character trait, which
yes, doesn't quite age or
mm,
translate well. No, but you're right about the fights, and you're right about this sort of the fact that they've. It feels like, um, again, as I watch these, I think about I'm watching usual Hollywood action films on the side and all this other stuff. And the thing you mentioned before with first film, and you mentioned about sort of like what Tom Cruise and Chris McQuarrie do with some of their stuff. They'll go somewhere and go, all right, what can we do? This is the stuff we
mm,
want to do. How are we going to do this, and how do we integrate it? Like you kind of feel there's an element of that with this instead of sort of if you watch like the Fast and the Furious or something on those lines. Whilst they're big and they're epic and whatever, they're so impeded by whatever the production is setting because it's got to hit certain things for the computer animated effects to go in and all that kind of stuff. Like that although they're mostly entertaining, there isn't that inventiveness in
mm,
some of the fights and stuff that you have with this, where you feel like Jackie turned up with his stunt crew and these other guys and was like, what have we got? Right, we've got to
mm,
shoot. We've got we've got this. We've got these metal frames. We've got this other, we've got this. They've literally walked around this and then choreographed it using the place and gone, right, we're not setting up the place to fit the fight. We're going to
mm.
fit the fight to set the place.
I
Now, I'm
think
sure
that's
there's, I'm
dead
sure,
on. Yeah.
yeah. And they're pretty, when there's metal frames that go da 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 and fall over, like the domino effect. All right, they've set that up. But for the vast majority,
Hmm.
they've gone, right, how strong is that chain dangling from the ceiling? Give it a really good pull. Yeah, that feels pretty solid. Right, we're using that. That's how this feels. And I love that.
Mm.
That it feels sort of that, um, you know, uh, tangibly, you couldn't do this fight anywhere else.
No, I agree. And there's like, as we said before, there's risk involved, isn't there? And
Mm.
it feels like everything is organically happening in the moment. Nothing feels choreographed. Nothing feels set up. It, but of course, everything is.
Yeah,
but the way that they film it, the way that they perform it, the way that Jackie Chan like action choreographs, it all works together to
yeah.
just feel
Even
like
the editing, just the edit, even
yeah,
the editing
the
sort of
constant
works.
flow, isn't there? And of course, as you said, everybody, I've always wanted to slide down a rubber chute.
Yeah,
It just looks cool, right?
yeah.
These big construction ones, which are these big tubes, we see it in so many movies where people slide down these. Until you watch Police Story 2 and you realize, oh shit, they don't bother putting a crash mat at the bottom of that.
No,
Because I don't think it's Maggie Chung at this point, or maybe it is, I don't know, only because of what I read about how like she was out of action after
yeah, yeah.
the stunt went wrong. So whether it's this stunt was before that, or whether now it's the actress which came in to replace her for the final scenes because she couldn't perform them. But whoever it is slides down the chute and
And
thumps
hits. Yeah,
really hard onto the ground at the bottom.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, they bounce. Like whoever it is, whichever actress did it, like she bounces, like she hits that framework, and you hear it and feel it.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
But more than that, like you say, and fair play to them, like I say, all the stunts. But then it's followed by Jackie jumping down it, and the guy then throws down like a
Mm,
suitcase, like some explosives or
yeah.
suitcase bomb, and it goes off just under Jackie Chan, and it eradicates the rubber, like this plastic tubing, and then he has to swing into um like a hatch that's in the
Mm,
side of the building. And again, I'm like, this could have gone so insanely wrong. Like I'm sure he's not on a rope inside that rubber tube. Like I don't know that, but I'm pretty much assuming that he's not on a rubber tube. You know, he's
mm,
not on a rope inside that plastic bag, basically.
yeah.
Um, and so yeah, even though it's like seconds, and it kind of sort of there's a sort of flippancy to it, like it's almost throwaway. Is
Hmm.
a moment when you're actually watching it and you're going, that's insanely dangerous. That's the thing with I think when Jackie Chan gets to a lot of his major stunts and his finales, it's like you realize everything he's doing is incredible. Like, there's no sort of there's no harness that's been CGI'd out in this bit.
Mm,
Even like there's a moment when he jumps over a banister and he ends up like he monkey bars up the underside of a set of stairs.
hmm.
And it looks cool. It looks fine. It looks, but it doesn't look down. There probably are crash mats at the bottom, whatever. But still, the only thing that's keeping him on the bottom of those stairs is his hands.
Yeah. Agree. I mean, and even when there are stuff to fall on, like there's a brilliant shot. I think it's when he fights Polar Bear and he gets
Yeah,
him off the
yeah.
balcony, and there's a brilliant like shot looking down like bird's eye, and you just watch this guy free fall all the way down. He lands on a bunch of very conveniently
Barrels.
placed blue barrels,
Yeah.
but still they dissipate quite quickly.
Oh,
They go flying in every which way, and that guy still hits the floor,
yeah.
and that is one held shot. So yeah, you're right. Even when there is protective mats,
Mm.
I'm not sure how much it does.
No, it might break your fall, but like in the sense of like, hitting three tables as you head to the floor is broken your fall.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's brilliant and it's brutal. And as you
Mm,
say, the final fight then between Jackie and the sort of the deaf mute guy is good. Like the action is
mm,
good. The martial arts are so good, and it reintroduces the fireballs, the little sort of like crackers, and this
mm,
thing where he makes. I'm not going to make the noise, but he does make this sort of excited, like you say, chimp animal-esque kind of noise.
mm.
And then when he's defeated on the floor and Jackie is then throwing the things back on him, he starts imitating him and doing it back.
Yes.
And I was just like, oh no, like you were doing so well. Like yeah, it's it made me. It's when I watch these films, especially from the 80s and early 90s. Obviously, I was born in 1981. And so like I was like 7, 8 when this film came out. I'd been, coming on 7 really. So we were at an age where you would, and it's a time as well. Like I hope, kids don't do it now, or they may do, but at least, it's way more frowned on of putting your tongue in front of your lower teeth behind your lip and making certain sounds and then using, I'm not even going to use the words or make the sound because I don't want to anymore. But it really made me think of that and being like,
Mm,
yeah, ableism was a real problem in the, in this era.
Yeah, I think it's misjudged,
Hmm.
certainly by today's standards. I think I understand Jackie's
I understand the point of what he's
motivation
doing.
in what
Yeah,
he's
yeah,
doing. I
yeah,
don't think it is ableist and harmful. I think it's only directed at one guy rather than a wider group of
yeah,
people. But you're right, you can't help but because we're trying to watch these and we're trying to be more understanding. I'm desperately trying not to use that word, but trying to
yeah.
be more understanding about the world and everyone's differences. And so I don't think it is ableist and in that way. I think it's
No,
just directed at this one guy who's pissed me off because
I think that's the point.
he's
He's
beaten me in a
angry,
fight. This guy beats him.
and he's well, more than that. He's slapped and thrown these things at May. So
Yeah.
like Jackie's angry. So this
Yeah.
is taunting more than
Yes. Yeah.
Mickey taking. Um,
Doesn't excuse it, but
no, no, no.
I think we can talk about it as a decision within the movie that makes
Yes,
sense.
yeah, I agree with that. I think it was more a fact. It sort of like to me, it sort of reminded me of that sort of thing when I was a kid, and I was thinking back and going like, yeah, man, kids are mean. Like kids are horrible.
Yeah.
Um, but again, like you said about the fire, and again, like Jackie gets set on fire. This other actor gets set on fire repeatedly.
Mm,
And then he gets kicked and beaten and falls into a bunch of fireworks. And again, like we get two sets of explosions at this
mm.
point. You get like the internal explosion where like Jackie's running across a gantry, and there's a shot where Jackie kind of looks over his shoulder, and I'm convinced that's not acting. Where like it goes off, and he almost is like, "Oh, that was a lot closer than I thought it was going to be." Um, and then he escapes, and you have the whole firework factory just go off in one massive explosion, and Jackie just running from it.
Yeah, he's like in
Um,
silhouette, and then he's in
yeah,
silhouette, isn't he? Like at the front of the building going up, because it's nighttime by this point, isn't it, as well? So yeah, the fireworks are going off. Yeah, it's brilliant.
yeah, and it looks great. It's a really good explosion.
There's money behind it, definitely.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Um, and that's it, really. That's sort of the
Mm.
end. It's one of those kind of
It sort of
like,
recalls the Dark Knight, actually. Now you've said that, that's really interesting. When Heath Ledger Joker is
mm,
walking away, and I think the timer of the bomb didn't go off when he
with
expected
the
it to.
hospital. Yeah,
Yeah, they kind of that's kind of a latter day version of this that invokes that sense of they really have blown this place up,
yeah.
but an actor's interaction with what's going on around them being part acting, part truth. I think you're right. It's definitely here in this scene.
And I do love that. Like, yeah, there's elements. And I think that happens throughout the scene because when you watch the credits, you realize like how dangerous these are.
Mm.
So there are moments when they're doing these stunts that you're like, you're a couple of seconds of editing away from someone rubbing their head and blood being found at the back of it or
Yeah,
something.
or the fire extinguishers coming out to put them out because the clothes have caught from the
Yeah,
sparks from these things, and yeah,
yeah, exactly. Like you never feel 100% like it never feels safe, does it? It never feels like they've gone,
no, this is where Maggie Chung got really injured, isn't it? As you said, with the falling frames,
yes,
one actually hit her on
catches her
the
on the
head.
back of it, and again hits her pretty hard. Like you
Mm.
see it knocks her down, and then you see the footage of them. They get like a bandage on the back of her head. She's bleeding quite heavily in that. So, but again, like Jackie does it. I think he has a similar act, not as bad, but I think this, as you said, head injuries galore
Yeah,
in the credits in this one. People going through glass windows, hitting their head, or being hit by something and debris, or being set on fire, which is
yeah.
the other one. Um, but yeah, one of the things we'll come to it when we do the third one. Um, but one of the things I thought was interesting is that the the first one was very much about, or the consequence was like, the first one, we've wrecked a shanty town. Like we drove a
Mm.
car or two cars through a shanty town, and then we had a bus do like this thing on the sort of urban streets. And then at the end of it, like we destroyed a shopping center with glass and motorbikes and all this other stuff. And it's amazing. This one keeps all of that away.
Mm.
Like, yes, you've got the riding on top of the bus and stuff, but there's no one that, and yes, we have the shopping center blown up, but it's not Jackie's fault. Like, this isn't Demolition Man. This is
Yeah.
whenever every time Jackie gets into something in this, like they have removed it from
Mm.
that element. Like this is an abandoned fireworks
That's
factory in the middle of
interesting.
nowhere. Yeah, you know what I mean they've sort of removed that human casualty element from it.
Mm.
So there's no longer a follow-up to say, you're a danger, you're a bloody danger. And he is, but you know, um
Yeah, I hadn't
so
thought of that, but I think that's spot on. Yeah, because the only one really is the restaurant fight back over an hour
mm,
ago now when he runs across the road, doesn't he? Which again,
yeah.
I love that scene because I can't quite work out whether that's choreographed
I don't think it is.
drivers or it's
I
just him
know.
pegging it across a busy
I
motorway.
I think that's some guerrilla sort of
Yeah,
filming.
I wondered.
Yeah,
But
it
that's the
feels
only one
like it.
really, isn't it, with any kind of members of public around? That's really interesting.
And
Yeah,
it's at
because
the
even the
beginning. It's
playground fight is
yeah,
because it's
isolated.
nighttime, it's isolated, it's abandoned, isn't it? Yeah.
So I feel that like, there's a they're trying to do something there of
Mm.
they've learned a lesson and okay they're having that because even at the end of the restaurant fight when it's all wrecked like Jackie sort of falls in his seat doesn't he? He's like, oh, I've messed up on this one.
Mm.
So he recognizes it. So it's sort of it's they've managed to sort of remove him from those sort of urban areas. So I think that's good because if you had the same thing again where you were like you shouted him out and almost fired him for doing you demoted him for doing that and then he did exactly the same thing in the second
Mm.
film, you'd be like, oh, he's gonna be a motorbike cop again. Like I can't keep doing this cycle. Um, so yeah, but it's sort of it's good. I think that what the other thing I note in the credits, the scenes apart from um the injuries, there's a scene where and I think it must be the um blowing up at the shopping center because I
Mhm.
think it's at night time, or it may be the fireworks. I'm not sure, but there's like a scene where you got like you see all these cameras in a row,
Oh yes, yeah, yeah.
and they've got like 30 odd cameras in a row. They're like, oh no, when this happens, like we are filming it every which way, and we're gonna make sure that we can cut to all these different angles and do all this stuff. Um, and so yeah, I'm like, that's again, whenever you watch some of the stuff you do, it's all real. Like there's no
Mm.
CGI. This is all blowing stuff up. You do kind of think, fair play. Yeah, I'd do the same. I'd have 140 cameras sat like recording this stuff as well.
But by this point, I mean, as you said, you mentioned Armor of God and Police Story. Armor of God is when he cracks his head open, isn't he, falling off the tree? And
Yes,
famously, he's still got the hole in his head for the rest of his life. And then
yes,
obviously, Police Story burning his hands and all this kind of. So he knows there's real injuries and risk to life in these movies. Project A when he falls off the roof and all that stuff. So yeah, he
yeah.
needs all those cameras capturing everything, not just in
Just in
case,
case. Yeah,
not well, sort of just in case, I suppose, as well as, but we need to make sure we really get this footage from every
we
angle.
want
Yeah,
we want it from a good angle. I want a good shot,
I'm
and
not
so we're
doing this
gonna.
again.
Yeah,
Let's put it that way.
this isn't a one camera deal where we're going to go back and do it four times. And I kind of respect that. That's it's a sensible way of approaching it, really. Um, but yeah, I think the thing is like the one thing I'm always a little not disappointed with. I like a an action film denouement. I like
Mhm.
the little resolutions. Sort of you have all the action, and I think because Lethal Weapon do these for me do these perfectly. I think they have that. Those four films nail it.
Oh, like now I'm going to go and have Christmas dinner with the Myrtles, or
Yeah,
now, yeah,
exactly.
okay.
That sort of thing. I love that
Hmm.
sort of like the first film. They've had the major. Riggs has had the fight on the lawn, and it's all gone. You know, whatever. But he's still going to turn up. Yeah, on Thanksgiving or Christmas, and you know, Martin Riggs. Murtaugh will invite him in to sort of eat with the family, and so there's I forget what the second one is, but they do that, don't they? They
I know what
have
you
that
mean.
sort of
Yeah.
like that, and I like that because it's sort of like I kind of miss that this doesn't have it, where it's sort of like Jackie and May
Mm.
with sitting down with her mom kind of thing, or just doing something to joke about it, or even him joining that police squad to be like, "Good work,
Mm.
guys," or the chief inspector saying like, "Welcome back," like properly. Um, it doesn't need it. It's not it doesn't break anything, but I don't know. I always kind of like those little, like a little cherry on top, if you
Mm.
will. Um. Anyway, what about you? Any final thoughts? What about any thoughts and really for Police Story 2?
The only thing I guess I would say is, we had that really interesting conversation last time about where this fits with action movies of the time. And I think, although I prefer it, I think overall,
Hmm.
comparatively to the first one, there are elements of Western movie making bleeding in here. I think much more here than the first one felt like a very Hong Kong Jackie movie,
Yeah.
perhaps to the point to its detriment where we criticize some of the humor and some of
Mm.
the choices he made. Here you can start to see the world starting to cross over a little bit. Perhaps the Lethal Weapons influencing this and the Commandos and the Cobras and all those films that we've been talking about. And I also had a really interesting journey in that the first time I watched it as part of my Jackie January a few weeks ago, I watched it in the subbed version.
Mm.
And then last night to prepare for tonight, as it was kind of a rewatch and it's quite recent, I thought, well, I'll watch the dubbed and I kind of have to kind of half pay attention then because I've watched it recently anyway. It's more just a refresher.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was really interesting because there are definite changes to
The dialogue.
lines of dialogue and
Yeah.
and through that presentation of character. So
Yes.
Jackie Chan comes across as a much more kind of Western tropey hero in the dub version than he does in the subbed version, which is really interesting how just that one thing that you can change really alters how a character can come across to you. It's quite an interesting experiment that I might well think I might try and do that again for when we come to do
It is
Police Story
interesting.
3.
Yeah, I often do, um, because of my timing. I sort of had both. I think because I'm getting old, I watch. There's a lot of things I might watch with subtitles on anyway. But I am because I do find that, because there's been a couple of anime that I've watched as well, where you've watched sort of like you'll watch the Western or audio track,
Mm,
and then you'll go, oh, I wonder what it's like with the original Japanese audio track, and then you watch it with subtitles. And all of a sudden you're going, this scene plays very differently. Now I'm watching it with subtitles because, like you say, just slight word changes or
mm.
inflections in the performance, and you're like, oh, this is different. And so I appreciate what you're saying. Even sometimes the choice of the dubbed voice sort of
Yeah.
affects it as well. This I don't find it so much with this. I think because I think they use the same person from Police Story 1 and 2. It seems, I
Hmm.
don't know, maybe the same, but I'm fine with that. Maybe because I think they've got like an American accent or something. I don't know. But to say, for example, Armor of God, which I watched,
Mm.
maybe we'll get to one day. But that's dubbed by a bunch of English guys.
Oh, is it? Okay. I watched the sub
So
version of
oh,
that.
I watched the
So,
dub version because I was just again because I had it on just sort of like, I was doing stuff.
mm,
And it's really weird because there's scenes in that when it's like Jackie talking, but he's clearly got like a London accent. Like, not quite strong Cockney, but like a London accent. I'm like, this is this is too weird. I can't grasp this. I think that's a really good point. Maybe something to sort of to really pick up on in the next one. I'm gonna try that. I'll watch it like with the dubbed and with the subs and
mm.
see how it changes the story. Um, yeah, and it's interesting because the next one actually has some interesting bits in that we'll get to when we get to it. But um, where this sits, well, because this is '88,
Mhm.
we've already had like Jackie's already gone to, he's always said he's tried to do his American sort of action film that didn't go down well, it's called The Protector or something like that.
Mhm.
And so he's coming back, and but I think the main thing with this is that it's not anti-Hollywood because you're right, you can see some of the elements. The pacing maybe in the framing is definitely sort of Hollywood influenced.
Mm.
However, there is still that sort of Jackie Chan humor and
Mhm.
sensibility in there. But more than that, as we've said, it subverts at every opportunity what you're expecting to see.
Until the finale. I agree with
Until the
you. Yeah, yeah,
finale.
absolutely.
But
Yeah,
like
yeah.
it definitely sort of like, we said like with the bombing of the shopping center and the
Mm.
Red Ball and even with the opening sequence where you're like, oh, we're gonna get a chase scene here, and it doesn't happen, and you're like, oh, they're really blue balling you for as long as
Mm.
possible. And it's almost like a taunt, a little bit of a, you know, um it's interesting.
Mm.
Those kind of choices.
I guess a lot of sequels, go bigger, don't they?
Yeah.
Whereas this one arguably doesn't. It comes smaller. It goes the other way, really. Other than the big explosion at the end, everything and the big fight at the end, everything else, you're right, is kind of scaled back. It's interesting.
But I think one of the points that you've made, which is to me, I think is why I think I prefer the first one because
Hmm.
of the spectacle. Like I will
Mm.
always appreciate the immense spectacle of that first film, but the film is about the spectacle,
Hmm.
and I think that's as we said, the story in that film is almost irrelevant in in vast parts of the film when you're just
Yeah.
sort of like, we're gonna do this, and you go, why? It's like, we don't know, but it looks cool, and you go, fair enough. Um, but with this, like, they definitely have sort of, they've really tried to make things have stakes and consequence, and you know why things have got consequences. Like the bombers are gonna actually bomb some people, and so the
Hmm.
threat feels real, and they're gonna, they're gonna bomb a public space, and there's all this other stuff. That first one, I feel the plot's mostly incoherent.
Yeah.
I don't really know why the stakes are so big. Like it's about drugs and stuff, but like, I never
Mm.
really feel like Mr. Chew is that much of a threat. You know, this one definitely sort of narrows down and focuses on the story, and as you said, the characters as well, so that the stakes feel a lot more, um, just more, not even higher, but they're just more like substantial. Like, oh, I
Yeah.
get what this is about. I know why we're having to stop these people. And it works better for that, I think.
Mm. Yeah, I agree with all of that.
Wonderful. Yes. Well, anyway, we are going to keep going, and we've got next is at least there'll be three Super
Hmm.
Cop, which is an interesting one because um, we've talked about female agency, and this one's going to introduce Michelle Yeoh,
Mm.
and it's also going to try and not so much tackle, but it's going to sort of at least allude to the relationship between Hong Kong and China.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and so yeah, we're gonna have some interesting sort of it. My memory of it is at least at the beginning of the film, there is actually some scenes where they really do try and lay out the difficult relationship between the two. So should be interesting. Michelle Yeoh, as we know, is awesome and
Yes.
holds her own in many ways. So um,
Yeah.
yeah, it'd be good to see how that goes.
Yeah. I think uh, it's a really solid trilogy. Thinking of these just as they are, I know it goes on, that really does provide consistency of character
Mm,
and relationships and kind of growth in ways which make sense that a lot of other franchises I think fall foul of. I think where we go in the next one and the challenges he faces and the fact that he has to team up with this female agent and
mm.
how that ties in with his relationship with May and it all makes sense. It's very well written. It's very well constructed, I think, as a three piece.
It is, and as you say, we will then get to we'll get to because you get super because Michelle Yeoh gets her. We'll say we're going to cover Michelle Yeoh gets her own spin off, and as you say, one of the things with it is there is a fourth one. It comes later. Um, it's called First Strike. It is considered the sort of it is considered the fourth entry in the police story. But what you've just said there about there being a trilogy
Mm.
is interesting because when I think we get to First Strike, I'll be interested to see how you feel. Is that a true continuation? Is that Lethal Weapon 4, or is it actually they were just like, actually this is this is a Jackie Chan story where he's still called Jackie and we've got some of the same actors and that's about it.
I think I've seen First Strike,
Yeah.
but I don't think when I watched it, I was at all aware it was linked to Police Story.
Yeah,
So what
I
you've
think
just
that's
said makes
yeah.
perfect sense.
Yeah.
I think it's, back when you were, oh, Jackie Chan, and now I'm going to investigate lots of different movies. And I'm pretty sure I watched it without, until having to research for this probably and putting together what the films are we're going to do and what is classed as the original series. I don't think my brain would have ever necessarily connected those two dots.
No. It really yeah, it's an odd one. We'll talk about it because I think I've seen it. It's been about a year or so since I've seen it. But watching these, and we've talked about tone, and especially we've talked
Mm.
about sort of the American influence, but also we keep talking about the 70s influence. I don't think we'll be saying that when we get to First Strike. So anyway, I think we shall wrap it up there. So we're two for two. We're in two, and yeah, Super Cop on their way.
Mm.
Um, but Jack, where can people find you, and what are you up to?
They can find me still on X for however long that still seems to be.
Yeah,
But I only really dip in and out now, as most people do. Um, I did recently just upload all my podcasts, so back to the filmography. I followed Spider Dan's advice, as I often try to do, and I put them all onto
Mm.
YouTube. So we'll see what what difference that makes. I don't know why somebody would go to YouTube to watch a static image along with people talking, but it appears lots of people do. So you can now find me on YouTube alongside all the
Who
usual
can
podcasting
account?
places.
That's it. Who can account for Gen Z and their strange behavior? That's what it is. Yes,
Yeah.
but yes, it's cool.
So yeah, so that's the new platform on, and the Statham franchise, not franchise, the Statham filmography watch continues. Get into that back end now, that kind of
Mm.
third act for him as he enters the Fast and Furious world, and he suddenly goes stratospheric. So I've got Spy coming up, and then we hit the Fast and Furious
Yes.
era.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because you're going to get to obviously I'm coming back for Wrath of Man later in the year. And is it Wrath of Man?
Uh, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
sorry, that blank look on my face is my brain desperately trying to work out
Yeah.
who's where and what. Yeah, sure, right,
Yeah.
Rathman. Yeah,
But
thank
of
you.
course, like you say about him reaching the stratosphere.
Oh,
I
nice.
know, yeah. Beekeeper has obviously done incredibly well.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think he's gonna, I don't think there's an end in sight for back
No,
to filmography at this point.
it's interesting. I wonder if he'll like just naturally transition into like the Liam Neeson Jerry actioners. Like
Oh, I
he's been
think
doing it the
so.
whole time anyway, but he'll
Yeah.
just sort of age into being classed as one of those people as well. He'll like never go away, maybe.
This is for a different. This is a whole different thing. But the thing I'm waiting for is the old man transporter.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Bring that back. And what's he called in that?
Frank Martin.
Frank Martin. Thank you. Yeah, yeah, like a more older, grizzled Frank coming
Yeah.
back to this. I'd love
Nice.
that. I would absolutely bring back, Basson to do it, the whole works, and go full out. I think I'd be amazing.
Mm.
But we shall see. Anyway, yes, but yeah, yeah, do check out all those places, and because Back to Filmography is great. It's all the different guests, all the different Stathams. It's as an action fan, it's a joy. It really is. I think so. I'm not gonna lie. I haven't watched. I want watch the films alongside it always. I think I've watched most of them, so it's sort of
Exactly.
It's
Yeah.
you don't need to deep dive into all the films, but you get enough, and it's well worth doing. So go check it out. But yes, we will be continuing our Jackie Chan
Mm.
police story retrospective. More than that, we've got some other things coming up. We are going to be we're reaching the end of the Storytime project for me and Tony. The Thing is next, which is going to be a bit of a film heavy thing. We are doing the original story. We're then going to be doing The Thing from Outer Space, the original 50s one. We're doing The Thing, and we're going to be doing
Mm.
The Thing 2011
Ah.
because apparently Tony hates me and wants me to watch it again. So we'll give it some airtime. And then beyond that, I'm starting a Then and Again with Mike. We're coming back to do June, ready for June Part 2 to come out.
Mm.
So we're going to be doing the David Lynch and the Denis Villeneuve June Part 1 soon. So we've got some exciting films and exciting bits and pieces coming up. I can also be found on all the social medias under 20th Century Geek, so come find us and engage and have a chat. What are your thoughts on the Jackie Chan films? Is this the best film series he's done? There are other ones. There's 3 films to the Asian Hawk, Armor of God series. There's a couple of there's Rush Hour and the Knights as well when he sort of did those. Maybe one day we'll pick up those as well. But for now, Jack, thank you very much for jumping on and talking this film. It's been great fun.
Thanks for having me.
And ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, and we shall see you on the next episode.